The Secrets of Star Trek is brought to you by the Starquest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Star Trek, where we discuss the hidden layers and deeper meanings found in all the Star Trek TV series, movies, and more. And today we're discussing The Infinite Vulcan. This is an animated series episode. And joining me today on the panel are Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going, Dom?
Very well, thanks. And Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
Folks, I want to suggest that you join the Starquest fan club very easily by texting Starquest to 66866. That's Starquest to 66866. And when you sign up, you will be able to get some emails from us and some behind the scenes and upcoming news and that sort of thing. So check it out. I also want to take a moment to mention another show on the Starquest Network that you will definitely enjoy called The Secrets of Stargate. Yes, the Stargate shows, Stargate SG-1, Atlantis, Universe, and whatever might come next.
Origins.
That's a dirty word.
Apparently, they're not going to talk about Origins. It's just started, so you can get caught up really quick. It features our own Father Cory Sticha, as well as Jack Barazini, Lisa Jones, and Victor Lambs. It's a great time. There aren't a lot of Stargate podcasts out there, and I've seen a lot of people got very excited about the fact that you guys are doing this, Father Cory.
Oh, we're having a lot of fun doing it. You know, we're if you've ever wanted to do a watch through of all the Stargate shows, and maybe someday we'll do Origins, maybe it's a April Fool's Day special. But we're going walkthrough all the way from SG-1 all the way through. Once we hit Atlantis, we'll add that in. So it's a great way to do kind of a walk through the entire set of series. So come join us.
Yeah, it reminds me how much I love that show. So you can find it at sqpn.com/Stargate or wherever podcasts are found. But today we're talking about this animated series Trek episode called The Infinite Vulcan. Jimmy, can you give us a recap of this story?
The team has beamed down to a planet run by peaceful plant people, and while there, the peaceful plant people take Spock captive. It turns out that some time ago, the plant people were going to impose their peace on the galaxy, but then a human scientist from the eugenics wars arrived on their world and accidentally decimated their civilization with a pandemic. We all know what that's like. Fortunately, the scientist wanted to impose peace on the galaxy also, so he and the survivors teamed up. The scientist has stayed alive all this time, sort of, by making giant clones of himself and transferring his memories into them. Having determined that Mr. Spock is the ideal peacekeeping specimen, he's made a giant clone of Spock 2, known as Spock 2. Unfortunately, the transfer of Spock's memories into the clone has left the real Mr. Spock dying. Kirk talks the giant Spock out of the idea of imposing peace on the galaxy, since the Federation is already at peace. And giant Spock does a one-finger mind meld with his tiny counterpart, saving his life. In the end, it's decided that the giant scientist and the giant Spock will stay on the planet to try to rebuild the race of peaceful plant people who now no longer need to impose their peace on the galaxy.
Right. Except there really isn't peace in the galaxy.
There's really not.
But we won't tell them that.
Yeah.
So this was written by Walter Koenig, the guy who played Chekhov, who was excluded from the animated series.
This was written before he was excluded.
Yes. He says before the decision was made as to who would be in it. And do we know why Walter Koenig was excluded?
Money.
Okay.
Initially, George Takei and Nichelle Nichols were also excluded, and Leonard Nimoy showed up and said, "Hey, where's George and Nichelle?" And they said, "Well, we didn't hire them." And then Nimoy said, "Well, then you didn't hire me either." But he didn't think to add Walter, apparently.
Yeah, I mean, Walter was a latecomer, I guess, but we had Maress replacing Uhura in some episodes, but she's
Chekhov.
back.
And Eric's replacing Chekhov.
Eric's replacing Chekhov, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a very alien environment design, as they are able to do in animated series. That's one of the things I really like about the animated series is the way they're able to do things like that.
I really like the world building in this. And I mean, we have this exotic looking planet with lots of plant life, but also, they've got a city there that's falling into ruins because of the pandemic. But we've got this city, it's being overtaken by the jungle, so to speak.
Mhm.
We've got several different creatures that are native to this planet that we meet. One of them is called a Retlaw plant, which is Walter spelled backwards. It's Walter Koenig's in-joke. Whenever he writes something, he'll spell someone's name backwards, and here he did it to his own.
Yeah.
But it looks kind of like a purple dandelion, but it can walk around and replant its roots in the soil, and it's deadly. And at one point, it stings Mr. Sulu, which then brings out the second of the races, which are the plant people. They're called Filosians, and they're radiant life forms, which I really like. They don't have a normal bilateral body plan. They have arms that go all the way, which are like tendrils that go all the way around their bodies. They have like 4 clusters of things that are kind of like feet that are splayed symmetrically around a central axis. And they have these heads that look kind of like green thistles or asparagus or an artichoke or something. And they're very alien. The least believable of the plant life forms we meet are these purple pterodactyls with tendrils on the bottom of them that they call swoopers.
Yeah.
And they're the least credible. But I liked the Retlaw and the Filosians. They're great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then I like the use of the word Filosian because, Philos is it's related to the way we categorize in the Linnaean system.
Phylum.
Right? A phylum, right. So it's kind of a little reference there. I mean, there's echoes of a lot of different story tropes in here. Like there's the Europeans coming to the New World and bringing a disease and wiping out the natives trope that we have here. And the pacifism, we have the eugenics thing. So there's a lot of different elements that he brings in to this story.
Well, it is interesting that the scientist who was the eugenicist was actually, he wasn't, a raving mad, Khan type character. He actually had good ideas, good intentions, even if it didn't play out well.
Yeah. He's sort of the opposite of Khan in that Khan was a warlord and this guy wants to be a peace lord, which is just a warlord with better branding.
Yeah.
Now, remind me. So his name was Stavros Caniculaus.
Caniculaus, but some actors pronounce it Caniculus.
It's like nuclear. Caniculaus. So they said, I think I got this. He was originally a scientist from Earth during the eugenics wars, like we said, and was exiled for trying to build a master race for peace. Right? Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he's also, since that time, since his disappearance, he's become a figure of legend in the Federation without the name Caniculaus.
Okay.
Both Bones and Kirk have heard rumors of a modern Diogenes seeking the perfect specimen. And that's a reference to the Greek philosopher Diogenes, allegedly was like seeking an honest man, and is often portrayed as like
carrying
around a lamp to light his path in the search for an honest man.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. I was unclear on why the clones need to be giant.
I know.
Apart from the obvious.
Really, the giant clones is the. I mean, I guess the swoopers are a little this way too, but the swoopers and the giant clones are the only dumb things about this episode. Yeah. It's actually a good story.
Oh, yeah.
It's just inexplicably, why are the clones giant? I mean, I can understand you want to clone Mr. Spock a billion times to have an army of peacekeepers. Fine. I mean, that's not really logical, but in terms of TV logic, it works.
Sure.
Why do they need to be giant? I guess because they'll be stronger and able to intimidate people better, but that also just makes them bigger targets.
Right. Well, also bigger resource. You have to feed them a lot more and build bigger buildings for them to sit in.
Well, and Walter Koenig missed a perfect opportunity to call it, instead of Spock 2, Super Spock.
should be Super Spock.
I also feel that the episode title is overpromising. The Vulcan is not actually infinite; it's just large.
Right.
I guess that they're referring to the idea of that he will live on infinitely with an infinite number of clones.
Well, then you don't put a giant Spock in your episode if that's what you want people to interpret the title as.
Yeah, exactly. It should be or Mega Spock. That would have been even better. Like,
they did bring up the IDEC, the infinite diversity and infinite combinations, which is kind of the catchphrase for the Vulcans.
Right.
Ideal, I should say, for the Vulcan.
And Kirk is able to talk Spock 2 out of galactic conquest on that basis. You know, if Vulcans aspire to have this principle that the world involves infinite diversity and infinite combinations, aren't you going to be interfering with that if you go conquer everybody? And that convinces Spock 2 to not conquer everybody. Although, you know, if I'm thinking like Spock 2 could have been programmed, it would be like, well, we can still have our infinite diversity and infinite combinations, but that doesn't mean they can't all play nice together, and I'm going to make that happen.
Yeah.
Right. And it is funny how they like hang a lantern, like they propose the problem that should have undermined Kirk's argument and never really answer it. Like Kirk tries to convince them there's peace of the Federation already, and they respond, well, what about the Klingons and the Romulans and the Kzinti?
Yeah, we get a name check for the Kzinti,
which is very nice, and we'll see them in the animated series. But it's like, yeah, what about them, Kirk? We don't actually get a good answer to that from him. He's caught flat-footed, and I love the fact that Kenny just throws it in there and doesn't take it out, doesn't deal with it. It's just there. And one of the other things I liked was the idea of like what happens to an apocalyptic mad scientist when his apocalypse has already come and gone. Like the apocalypse that he was trying to defend against, you know, create this mad scientist sort of solution to the eugenic wars and all this stuff came and went, and now the Federation anyway is at peace. And so what does he do now? It's like he doesn't have a job anymore, and so they have to find him a new job. So I like that. I also like the fact that there's apparently still a giant Spock out there on Philos.
Yeah. So there are a number of potential connections to previous episodes in this. One of them is, once again, we have Sulu's interest in botany.
Yeah.
Because at the beginning, when they meet the deadly dandelion, it's like Sulu who's the one that's all over it.
Right.
And so I like that. And by the way, I like the fact that the plant people are using these electronic neck translators that they have around their necks. And, you know, so they're using wearable tech. I think y'all ought to do a Secrets of Tech episode on those things. I like the fact that when they come out and they want to cure Sulu, Bones insists on medical tests for the vaccine. It's like, you know, wait, I can't let you just give him some alien dewdrop. Now, of course, really, Dr. McCoy would insist they tested on him.
Yes.
But I like the fact that he insisted on medical tests rather than just letting them do it. I also find it interesting the resonances that this episode has with the third season opener of the original series, Spock's Brain.
Yep.
Where we again have an alien or other planetary planet that wants Mr. Spock for its own purposes. To run the planet. In the case, they want Spock's brain to run the planet. In the case of Spock's brain, here they want the whole Mr. Spock so he can become a peacekeeping force. But it's the same basic plot, and it's tied into a similar theme. The ticking clock in Spock's brain is the fact that Vulcan anatomy is such that it's highly dependent on the brain, and even like a substitute artificial life-keeping thing won't work indefinitely. So they've got to get Spock's brain back because of how tightly integrated. They can't just run the rest of the body with like blood pumps or something.
Right.
And here we have the same essential ticking clock. With Spock's mind transferred into the clone, his body is dying. And so they've put him on like a golden glowing 6-poster bed, which he mysteriously is sometimes on, but sometimes not on the bed.
The animators were not always very paying attention to continuity.
Yeah. But they've got to get his mind back in his body if he's not going to die. And Caniclius says, well, I can't copy minds. I can only transfer them. But Vulcans can.
Yep.
So Spock just puts one finger on tiny Spock's head, my mind to your mind, and he copies his own mind into him again. So we've got, Katra manipulation going on here. This was not the first time in 1,000 years anybody had done the Faltorpan ceremony or whatever.
This is true. And once again, we have this erroneous idea that brains are things that can be copied and downloaded, as opposed to, they can only ever be one copy, and then you remove the patterns from one brain and put it in another brain, and the original brain doesn't have it anymore, and that sort of thing.
You got to remember, though, this is Star Trek, where you can't have more than one copy of a program. You can't duplicate a program. Like, say, the Voyager's EMH, you can't make multiple copies of him. You can only have the one, and it only exists on one system.
Yep. Yeah.
I got a kick, though, where they talk about, where Giant Spock does the mind touch, and they call it that, the Vulcan mind touch, not mind meld.
That was great. Also, I like how, and everybody kind of gets a little kind of character bit in this. Sulu did, and Spock obviously does, and Kirk does. But McCoy, he to combat the plant people and their swooper underlords or whatever, he mixes up a batch of his great granddaddy's weed spray, which they then use in spray guns.
Right.
I mean, they're futuristic looking spray guns, but they're using spray guns to put herbicide on these people and things.
So the Federation endorsed chemical warfare.
Yeah, it's Agent Orange is essentially, which was not that far in the past when this came out. So yeah, this would have been familiar to folks when they saw this, the defoliants killing the swoopers. Yeah, and even Scotty and Uhura get some time in this, some screen time in this episode. They having to deal with the problems on board the ship.
And we've got some role reversal, because since Scotty is in charge on the ship, Uhura gets to be the shoe blow apart captain.
So there is an interesting story behind Walter Koenig's participation in this one. For one thing, he wanted to do the voice of Stavros in this. He even auditioned. They came and had him come in to do a recording, and he said it turns out they never had any intention of hiring to do that, even though the character design, the drawing of Caniclius looks a little bit like Walter Koenig at the time.
I don't see it. I read that same thing, and I don't really think Caniclius looks like Walter Koenig, but
unless he had that receding hairline. I don't know have any pictures of Walter Koenig from that time, but there was Caniclius has a receding hairline there.
A widow's peak, yeah.
Yeah. So I thought it was, and also that Gene Roddenberry had him do, I think, 10 rewrites of the script.
Oh. Yeah, but Gene Roddenberry did that to everyone.
Yeah, right. So that was an interesting little behind the scenes on that. So there is one thing I just mentioned at the very end.
Let's see. He's going to go there.
Kirk makes an inscrutability joke with Sulu.
Yeah.
Yep.
That was it was interesting to see that from the 2021 point of view.
So yeah, Sulu in the final battle throws a plant guy using some kind of martial arts move, and Kirk says, "You got to teach me that move." And Sulu is the one that brings up inscrutability and says, well, you have to be inscrutable to do it. And then Kirk says, Mr. Sulu, you're the most scrutable man I know.
Right.
So cultural background on this. Scrutability is the ability to be easily understood and interpreted. Inscrutability is the opposite. It's harder to understand and interpret. And in I guess 19th and early 20th century stereotyping, after a lot of Asian immigrants started coming to the United States, their reserved manner was understood in terms of, wow, those Asians are inscrutable. They're hard to figure out from their facial expressions, since they don't use them the same way as the native rambunctious Americans do.
Mm-hmm.
And so the inscrutable Asian person became a stereotype. And here, I find this interesting. Now, today's native impulse is for everybody in current woke culture is to immediately freak out because we have a characteristic associated with a population. It's like, oh no, we cannot associate characteristics with populations.
Mm-hmm.
But what I find interesting here is how relaxed everybody is about this. George Takei is the one who delivers the line that brings it up. Right. And presumably this is put in there by Walter Koenig as a nice moment for Sulu, where Sulu is effectively subverting the trope in a humorous manner by saying, oh, I teach you this move, but sorry, you got to be inscrutable. And he's being playful with it, and there's no malice here. There's a humorous subversion of a stereotype. And okay, fine. It's not meant to be racially offensive, and there are lots of parallel cases where, yeah, okay, even though something is a stereotype, it's not really meant to be offensive.
Right.
Think about the laconic image of the American Indian, which is kind of similar. Or I'll, doing one on me, redheads have fiery tempers. Or, any kind of, okay, who cares?
Right.
Let's not be overly wound up and hypersensitive about every little thing.
Yeah.
But I admit, watching this with knowledge of woke culture, it's like, ooh, that's not going to please a bunch of people.
It's one of the things about reading, watching, older entertainment or, older books or whatever is to realize the time I live in is not the only time that exists. And to see the things in the context of the times before, obviously there are elements of our history that we shouldn't be proud of, and that we're better off for not having certain things in our society, of course. But also, sometimes there's a lack of perspective that people have on the way people used to deal with things.
And an assumption that everything in the past was as offensive then as it is now, or would be treated that way. Recently, I was watching a documentary about Malcolm X, and his assassination in the 1960s, and I'm watching archival footage of Malcolm X, and he's using the word Negro. Just like it's an ordinary thing, which is what it was when I was growing up. It was considered a respectful term for people of African American descent. It was a term they applied to themselves. It was just the normal term. And then I'm listening to a podcast, and it's like, okay, this is going to have the word Negro in it, so everybody be careful. It's like,
Yeah. Well,
read Huckleberry Finn. They use
they can't anymore.
Well, in Huckleberry Finn, which is a pro-African American novel, they're using the N-word a lot, and it is not meant to inflict pain. It is very clear when you read. I mean, Mark Twain is promoting African American rights in this book, and he's criticizing the slavery system. And when the N-word is used, it's not meant to inflict pain. It's just obvious when you read it. It's not the insult of the type it is today.
Well, there's a great danger when people judge past times by current standards. There's going to be a point in the future where things that are common today, that are popular today, that are accepted today, will be rightly judged. And not going to get political on which those are, but just there are things that I firmly believe that people accept and fight for today. 100 years from now, they're going to be looking at us backward, early 21st century Americans who are doing these things, and I don't think people who are so quick to look at like this scene with Sulu who would immediately, you need to ban the series because of this. Right. I don't think they realize that things they do now, people will be saying the same thing about them.
Right. Or hopefully we'll outgrow that impulse to want to cancel the things of the past because of they might have not adhere to the current standards of things. Yeah, I think there's something even beyond entertainment that is valuable about encountering culture. Let's call it animated series, Star Trek: The Animated Series culture of the past, and examining it on its terms, and accepting the good, rejecting what we don't like, but at least examining it and examining ourselves. So that's why I brought it up. Is just because I know that that would be the sort of thing that might come up in certain conversations, and I thought it would be an interesting thing to discuss and maybe hear from listeners about if they have ideas about it. So let's move on from there. Anything left to say about the Infinite Vulcan, Father Cory?
I got a chuckle when they described the walls of the underground caverns as 600 times denser than lead. I thought, Stephen Moffat on Doctor Who must have learned from this and take it to the next level, like saying, in Hell Bent, it's 10 bazillion times denser than diamond.
Right. How about you, Jimmy?
Nope.
Okay, let's take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Star Trek, including Dominic M., Jeff H., Chris N., Joseph B., and Gail S. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Star Trek and all the shows at Starquest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. So that's it from us. We'd love to hear what you think about the animated series episode, The Infinite Vulcan. You can let us know by commenting on the show at sqpn.com/trek, or our Facebook page at facebook.com/StarQuestMedia, or send an email to trek@sqpn.com. And we'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the Next Generation episode, The Survivors. Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the secrets of Star Trek.
Thank you, Dom.
Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, and live long and prosper.
And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Star Trek on Starquest. And remember, the Vulcan human blend of wisdom, sense of order, durability, and strength is the finest the Master has ever found.